Homemade green bean casserole, and I mean fully homemade down to the crisp shallots on top. It's delicious, it's worth the effort. You're gonna enjoy it. Let's make some. When we gather around the table, when we come to, whether it's the holidays, whether it's just any time, green bean casserole is one of it's the hit. We all know it. Honestly, growing up, my mom loved green bean casserole so much, we had it most Sundays. Now, she didn't always make the homemade version, but this is the full-on homemade version for that best umptious green bean casserole. The adults are gonna love it. Kids are still gonna love it, even though it doesn't come from a can. I know, sometimes it can be an iffy one. But it's a good one to mix in, and it's a good one just to have something extra special, and that's what this is all about. So it's starting with fresh green beans. Now, usually anymore, most times of the year, you can find fresh green beans. Sometimes they're the haricot vert variety. That's what these are the French style, which are a little bit younger, but they still will work just as fine. So any green bean. Now, I am cutting them in half. You also are gonna notice, yes, I did. I left the pointy end on instead of just trimming off. You know, this is all just green bean. I leave that on. I don't trim it off. Same as when I grow them in the summer, I like to leave that on. And I just trim them in half because honestly, once they cook and they're a little bit limp, that's pretty much a bite size. You can cut them really any size you want. You know, I always think with cooking, we get so used to things being a certain way. Guess what? You can make it work for you. Make it work in your kitchen. That's kind of the point. So once they are ready to go, washed, cleaned, trimmed, we have water going over here on the stove. You can see we have a few things going because this is a multi-step process. Green bean casserole homemade, it's better, but it takes a little bit more steps. But you know everything that goes into it too, which is nice. So what I have is water that's boiling, plenty of water, and I'm gonna salt it very well. And do you know why that is? Because good salted water, it does not all go into the green bean. It actually though, it keeps their color much better. It keeps them bright, vibrant, and that's what you want. So what I'm gonna do is put all the green beans in. We're gonna blanch them, meaning we're not gonna fully cook them until they're just mushy. We wanna cook them just enough, shock them in some cold water to stop it so they don't overcook. And that's just gonna take a few minutes of cooking, and then we will put them in ice water. We're gonna make a sauce. We're even gonna make our own onions. I just drained the green beans, and so I wanna instantly put them in ice water. That's the blanching. You just shock them so they stop. I'm gonna put them right down into that ice water. We had it prepared. This is just gonna stop the cooking. Gonna keep them from getting mushy. You don't want mushy beans. You want them just enough. So we're gonna let those sit, and we're gonna come back over here. Now, what I have over here are mushrooms. You can use cremini, you can use white, but what we're doing here slightly different is we're keeping them in nice big chunks. Now, mushrooms, if you've cooked them, you know they cook down to like nothing. But instead of the canned mushroom soup that has little bits of what you assume are mushrooms, but you have no idea, I want you to know what this is. And I want you to know after they cook. So we cooked them in nice pieces, but remember, they're gonna really cook down. And now what we're gonna do is add them to some butter that I have heating in the skillet. So we're gonna take these over. You can see my butter is right here, and we're just gonna add in our mushrooms. Gonna spread them out just slightly. And that sizzle means it is heating. That's exactly what we want here, is some of that heating to go on right now. So I'm going to just toss them a little bit, make sure they have that butter, make sure they're getting coated in it, let them really saute, begin to brown, cook down, and then we'll move on. So if you look at these mushrooms, you can see they've really browned. See all that fond it's created on the skillet? See how beautifully brown they are? That's also because I didn't salt them right away. That means they were able to brown a little bit easier. So I am now going to salt them. Super important now. Add the salt. Salt draws out moisture. So if you salt them in the beginning, it takes them a lot longer to brown. I'm gonna add a little bit more butter. And what that is now gonna do is be the base of pretty much our sauce we're gonna create. So we're gonna create, just like we would when we make any type of kind of white sauce or want to thicken something, we're gonna let this butter melt into the pan, and see as it's melting, it's starting to pick up some of that beautiful brown bits, also called the fond. That's good. All these things in the sauce we're gonna build in here are gonna do that. Now, with the butter melting, what we're gonna do, I have flour. So butter and flour together, make a roux, and that's what we're gonna do here, is we're gonna make a roux, and that is going to thicken just enough the sauce we wanna create for these green beans. So I'm going to sprinkle, I want to get that butter all the way melted there, which is just about there. And then I want to sprinkle this flour over that whole mixture. Now, what the important thing to remember is you want the flour to be just enough, not too much that's gloppy or gluey. So now that the butter's melted and it's kind of foamy, I want that. I'm gonna sprinkle the flour right on it, and we're gonna start stirring that in and letting it cook for just about a minute. So the flour really tightens everything up, kind of creates a coating on those mushrooms. And you wanna cook it just for about a minute because that kind of cooks off some of that raw flour flavor. I'm sure you've heard that before, and that's what it's doing. I'm gonna add in some garlic. So some of you were surprised when I've talked about in the past that garlic can burn. So we add it after we cook something for a long time, whether it's onions or in this case mushrooms. I don't want that garlic to burn. It can get bitter when it burns. So if it cooks too long at a high temperature, it can burn. So I have the garlic in there now. Smell it right away. It's fragrant. I'm gonna add a couple weird ingredients. So I'm gonna add a little bit of Dijon mustard. And no, that is not to make these mustardy, but what it does is it adds kind of a funky depth of flavor along with Worcestershire sauce. So we're gonna add that right in there. And we just wanna kind of mix that together with the flour, with that fond that's being created. Really, this is a deep flavor punch. It's umami. It adds so much complexity to this. Now I'm gonna slowly start pouring in some milk. And with this milk, I have some, I left it over here, so let's get it. I mixed up some stock. So I use Better Than Bouillon a lot, and I will just put it in water, put it in my salad shaker for dressings, and then mix it together, and it makes a quick stock. So I'm gonna pour that in with the milk, and this is now what's going to create the sauce around everything we're making here with the flour. So we're gonna put in little bits. We're gonna just stir it. It's gonna break up all that beautiful flavor that's on the skillet until it's all added. So I'm bringing over our thickened sauce, really is what it is. I'm gonna put it right here. And it picked up all those brown bits and that fond that was created, and that's exactly what we want. So to finish this up, I'm gonna add a little bit of sour cream. You know, what this does, just add some more richness. Was it not rich enough? No, it was not rich enough. Some black pepper, just a little bit of that nice punch at the end. A little squeeze of lemon juice. You know, this is a heavy, strong flavor, and we want it to be a little bit more tempered. So I'm putting some lemon juice with it, just to kind of brighten it up. Now I'm gonna mix this in, and what that does is it just adds this beautiful creaminess with that sour cream, and it just smells amazing. So with that now, we have our green beans. I took the liberty of draining them from that ice water. You want none of the ice on them either. So make sure to drain them well. And then we can just put them right back into, this is the kettle I used, the stock pot I used to actually cook them in. So why dirty something else to actually mix them together, which they look beautiful there. So now I'm gonna pour all this right over the top and stir. Now, as always, I wanna make sure to get every little bit of this out because that's some really good sauce. Now, what you're also gonna notice is this is not gloppy, this is not too much sauce. It's, to me, just enough. So when we mix these together, they're all gonna be coated, but not overpowered. Here's the thing, we're using good green beans, okay? Why would we make them so you don't even taste them and notice their texture? So this sauce is going to be, to me, just the right ratio to be a sauce, but not only a sauce, if you know what I mean. This is beautiful, actually. I think making your own is so rewarding, and it's such a different complexity than what you would have made if it was from a can. So we're gonna pour it right into our baking dish. I have a few there. And guys, this is the one thing I will say. You never know how hard this is, but doing things in front of you so you can see it means I can't. So I'm gonna try to scrape all this in, but I sometimes do miss it now when it's in front of me. So I'm pouring them all in, the green beans, that sauce. I'm gonna just spread them out into an even layer. Notice too how it's nice pieces of green bean. Now, often growing up, we would use home canned green beans for a green bean casserole. That can work, it can just overcook them sometimes. So you'll add a little bit of a mushiness on it. That's the only difference. So you could use them. If you don't wanna use fresh, I would say let's maybe look for frozen, which won't be quite as overcooked usually. So what I wanna do is just kind of clean up the sides, only because when that bakes, those sides that bakes on. And so it just makes a little bit nicer presentation if you can go through and any of that amount that kind of just hit up on the sides, you just wanna do it. So now we want to bake it through. While it's baking, I'm gonna finish, clean up, but we're gonna also make we're gonna make a crispy onion topping. Better than anything from a can too, I promise. While the green bean casserole is in the oven and it's just warming through, making sure everything's bubbly hot, we're gonna make some crispy shallots. Now, shallots are sweeter. They're a little bit lighter in flavor, and I think they're the best to use. I'm using a mandolin. Be careful with them. They're extremely sharp, but it makes a lot quicker to make these wonderful little rounds instead of having just to chop them all by hand. You know what? You can work on your chopping skills, do it by hand. You'll be better for it. We have to pick and choose our battles. This is not what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna let them just be. Now there's a lot of moisture content in an onion. So that means when you can put them in oil, they can splatter, they can spurt. So we're only gonna do a batch at a time. I'm just gonna take them over here to my hot oil, do whatever temperature gauge you use, whether it's a candy thermometer. I'm gonna on this one just check it with a instant read here, check it. And then what we're gonna do is put them in, we're gonna let them fry till they're crispy. Like no breading needed. I think sometimes it's kind of funny how we try to bread all these things and it's like, wait, we don't need to bread them. They are gonna fry beautifully crispy brown on their own. So the second batch now of these onions are done. Now you can see, you take them to a beautiful brown. Now you can do whatever brown you want. I usually prefer a little bit darker. You just wanna be careful, hot oil, of course, so you always have to, practice safe skills here. I'm just spreading them out. I did one batch underneath. Now this is the second batch that you really should put on kind of around the edges so it still drips onto, any of the excess oil drips onto the paper towel there. But look how easy this is. No breading, which I get. This is a already heavy dish. What does it matter if you do breading on the onions? I think breading really just makes them much more messy. I think it makes them much more of a pain to fry. I don't like that. So I like to then sprinkle on some good salt. Why? Because this is seasoning. That's what's gonna give them tons of flavor. And then take them over, and we're just gonna bring them right over to the casserole I just pulled out of the oven. So this had been bubbling all throughout. I don't like to put these on in the oven. I want them to maintain that crispiness. So I like to put them on here at the end, and I like a good amount of them, as you can see. I want them to really have a beautiful pile on top. So we don't have any onion in the actual green bean casserole. We didn't saute onions. We didn't do any of that. Instead, they're all gonna be right on top. I mean, is that not beautiful? It is, and all those little bits at the end, you can keep those for yourself. I won't tell anyone, because that's the good stuff. Look how beautiful this is. Homemade green bean casserole. Honestly, it's pretty simple, and I think that's the joy of it, is that, yeah, it takes some steps, but they're doable steps. They're ones that anybody can do, and that's the fun part. So now is the really hard task, you guys, where I have to try it. And I know it's something we just have to do when we make food, but I will take it. Now, what I love is the nice pieces of mushroom in there, the beautiful bright green beans. That's what you want, are the brightness from them. It's what you want green bean casserole to taste like, but it usually doesn't. This actually does. It has a slight brightness, but more so it has a depth of flavor in that sauce. And when you get these crispy shallots or onions on top, my goodness, is it delicious. It's a great thing for a side dish, obviously. It's a great thing for a special occasion, maybe a weekend, maybe a holiday. Any of those it's gonna work really well for, and you're gonna see why the fruits of your labor are worth it. As always with these videos, what do I hope you do with them? I hope you're inspired to maybe make something you haven't made, maybe make it homemade fully, maybe have people come together, enjoy a delicious meal. That's what this is all about. It's taking your family, bringing them in, making something. Check my website, wiseguy.com, for this recipe. All my other recipes are on there. And of course, as always, have a good Christmas. Enjoy it, enjoy the food, that's the point.